A leather bag filled with food, a flask of hot tea, a pair of fur-lined gloves that Cinna left behind, 3 twigs, broken from a naked tree laying in the snow, pointing the direction I will travel. This is what I leave for Gail at our usual meeting place on the first Sunday after the Harvest Festival. I have continued on through the cold, misty woods, breaking a path that will be unfamiliar to Gail, but is simple for my feet to find. It leads to the lake. I no longer trust our regular rendezvous spot offering privacy, and I'll need that and more to spill my guts to Gail today. But will he even come? If he doesn't, I'll have no choice but to risk going to his house in the dead of night. There are things he has to know, things I need him to help me figure out. Once the implication of what I was seeing on the Mayor Underseas television hit me, I made for the door. Started down the hall just in time, too, because the mayor came up the stairs moments later. I gave him a wave. "Looking for Madge?" he says in a friendly undertone. "Yes, I want to show her my dress," I said. "Well, you'll know where to find her." Just then, another round of beeping came from a study. His face turned grave. "Excuse me," he said, and he went into his study, closed the door tightly. I waited in the hall until I had composed myself, reminded myself to act naturally. Then I found Madge in her room, sitting at her dressing table, brushing out her wavy blonde hair before the mirror. She was in the same pretty white dress she had worn on reaping day. She saw my reflection behind her and smiled. "Look at you! Like you came right off the streets of the capital." I stepped in closer, my fingers touching the Mockingjay pin. Even my pin now. Mockingjays are all the rage in the capital, thanks to you. "Are you sure you don't want it back?" I asked. "Don't be silly, it was a gift," said Madge. She had tied her hair back with a festive gold ribbon. "Where did you get it anyway?" I asked. "It was my aunt's, but I think it had been in the family a long time." "It's a funny choice, a mockingjay," I said. "I mean, because of what happened in the rebellion with the Jabberjays backfiring on the Capitol and all." The Jabberjays were a mutation, genetically enhanced male birds created by the Capitol as a weapon to spy on the rebels in the district. They could remember and repeat long passages of human speech, so they were sent into rebel areas to capture our words and return them to the Capitol. The rebels caught on and turned them against the Capitol by sending them home loaded with lies. When this was discovered, the Jabberjays were left to die. In a few years, they would be extinct in the wild, but not before they had mated with female mockingbirds, creating an entirely new species. "But mockingjays were never a weapon," said Madge. "They were just songbirds, right?" "Yeah, I guess so, but it's not true. A mockingbird is just a songbird. A mockingjay is a creature the Capitol never intended to exist. They hadn't counted on the highly controlled Jabberjay having the brains to adapt to the wild, to pass on its genetic code, to thrive in a new form. They hadn't anticipated its will to live. Now as I trudge the snow, I see the mockingjay hopping about on the branches as they pick up on on other bird melodies, replicate them, then transform them into something new. As always, they remind me of Rue. I think of the dream I had last night on the train, where I followed her in mockingjay form. I wish I could have stayed asleep just a bit longer to find out where she was trying to take me. It's a hike to the lake, no question. If he decides to follow me at all, Gail's going to be put out by this excessive use of energy that could be better spent hunting. He was conspicuously absent from the dinner at the mayor's house, although the rest of his family came. Hazel said he was homesick, which was an obvious lie. I couldn't find him at the Harvest Festival either. Vic told me he was out hunting. That was probably true. After a couple hours, I reach an old house near the edge of the lake. Maybe house is too big a word for it. It's only one room, about 12 feet square. My father thought that a long time ago there were lots of buildings. You can see some of the foundations. That people came to them to play and fish in the lake. This house outlasted the others because it was made of concrete. Floor, roof, ceiling. Only one of the 4 glass windows remain, wavy and yellowed by time. There's no plumbing, no electricity, but the fireplace still works. There's a wood pile in the corner that my father and I collected years ago. I start a small fire, counting on the mist to obscure any telltale smoke. While the fire catches, I sweep out the snow that has accumulated under the empty windows, using the twig broom my father made me when I was about 8. I played house here. Then I sat on the tiny concrete hearth, thawing out by the fire, waiting for Gail. It's a surprisingly short time before he appears. A bow slung over his shoulder, a dead wild turkey he must have encountered along the way, hanging from his belt. He stands in the doorway, as if considering whether or not to enter. He holds an unopened leather bag of food, the flask, and Cinna's gloves. Gifts he will not accept because of his anger at me. I know exactly how he feels. Didn't I do the same thing to my mother? I look in his eyes. His temper can't quite mask the hurt, the sense of betrayal he feels at my engagement to Peta. This will be my only chance, this mating today, not to lose Gail forever. I could take hours trying to explain, and even then have him refuse me. Instead, I go straight to the heart of my defense. President Snow personally threatened to have you killed, I say. Gail raises his eyebrows slightly, but there's no real show of fear or astonishment. Anyone else? Well, he didn't actually give me a copy of the list, but it is a good guess that it includes both of our families, I say. It's enough to bring him to the fire. He crouches before the hearth and warms himself. Unless what? Unless nothing now, I say. Obviously, this requires more of an explanation, but I have no idea where to start. So I just sit there, glooming into the fire. After about a minute of this, Gail breaks the silence. Well, thanks for the heads up. I turn to him, ready to snap, but I catch a glint in his eye. I hate myself for smiling. This is not a funny moment, but I guess it's a lot to drop on someone. We're all going to be obliterated no matter what. I do have a plan, you know. Yeah, I bet it's a stunner, he says. He tosses the glove on my lap. Here, I don't want your fiancé's old gloves. He's not my fiancé. That's just part of an act. And they aren't his gloves. They were Cinna's, I say. Ah, give 'em back then, he says. He pulls on the gloves, flexes his fingers, and nods in approval. At least I'll die in comfort. That's optimistic, of course. You don't know what's going to happen, I say. Let's have it, he says.